Now I'm bringing back what we just looked at, and I want to discuss with you some of the other options that are available. Let's just start with the melody line. Well, this melody line can also be played by the violas. So you could put the viola section on that line and be a very rich, creamy sound as it moves up the viola register. And that would mean that those inner parts would drop down, so that the part now being played by violin 2 will be played by violin 1, and this inner line here, which does not drop below a G, would stay with violins 2. And that would be a very interesting, very colorful sound. Berlioz used that every once in a while. The score Harold in Italy. So that was one solution. You could come down here. Yes, you have the cellos on the bass line, but here you can make another change. You could keep the violins exactly where they are, and where the violas are, if you have a strong enough cello section that can play in the upper register above the staff. That's something you have to watch, especially if you're writing for students or amateur orchestras. You could theoretically put, well, not theoretically, you could put the cellos where that viola line is, and then you could put the violas on the cello line and let the violas catch the bass. That's a very common thing to do in string quartet writing, and so that would be another little interesting solution there that you could work with. It's not impossible that you could also double the violins 1 plus the violas. On the melody line, you would then keep violins 2 where they are, and then put the cellos on that inner line, and then put the bass line with the basses as a possible pizzicato sounding an octave lower. So just going through this very quickly, I don't have any notes in front of me. I'm just going off the top of my head as I go through this. But we're seeing that we have some really interesting opportunities available to us in the scoring process. And so what you want to do is, when you get the book, you can just stick with his examples, see how he did, and go, okay, and then jump to the workbook. Or you could challenge Dr. Wagner's solutions, which I would, and come up with other solutions and then score and record them. This is the companion text, Professional Orchestration 2A, Orchestrating the Melody Within the String Section. It's available for separate purchase. This is the only book that goes through and describes all these string techniques. This is applied, what you're doing with Dr. Wagner's book. In the Professional Orchestration, we're giving you 63 different techniques within the orchestra. And I went through this book twice. The first time I went through it was when I was in college. Or actually, I gotten out of college. I'd gone to Berkeley and Boston. And I had the obligatory 1 semester of orchestration, but it really didn't prepare me for sitting down and understanding what was going on here. Actually, I've been through this book potentially a third time. I went through it once with a leading Hollywood orchestrator in Los Angeles after I moved there. And then after I went through and wrote Professional Orchestration 2A, I went back through it a third time, picking examples here and there, and just to see how many more techniques I had picked up that were readily available to me. And a technique is vocabulary. The more vocabulary you have, the better able you are to express yourself and to begin to look at these examples and go, well, gee, not only what are my opportunities here or options, but what are they going to sound like before I deploy them and put them in front of people? So this is a great book. I think it's a great book, not just because I wrote it, but because it gives you what you need to know. So it's not necessary for you to have this book when you're working with From Piano to Strings, but it's certainly a good companion text to have. Okay, so now we get down to 8 MIDI mock-up considerations. Let's just kind of go through these. This is not in any list of priorities except for the first 2. After that, I just wrote down what came to my mind. First consideration is, are you doing a MIDI mock-up for yourself, or are you doing it for commercial use? For yourself means you've just done the example and you've got a library and you just want to hear what it sounds like, and that's as far as you want to go with it. Or maybe you're working with a program like Finale and Sibelius, and it comes with, a basic orchestral program, and so you key it in there, and you listen to it for that, for that purposing. And your objective is not to send it out for somebody to pay you for it. In other words, you're just doing this for you. Now, if you're doing it for yourself, then you just work with what you've got, and you don't worry about assessing where all these articulations are. If you're going to be using it for commercial use, or if you are trying to get people to pay you to do work and you're doing MIDI mock-up orchestral work, well, now that's a different consideration, because when you approach a piece of music for a MIDI mock-up, for the most part, you have to put an articulation on its own track. Unless you've got a player that allows you to manipulate and put different articulations within the same track, you have to break up a melodic line, break up the score, and then each technique needed is its own track. And so what happens is you get this mosaic of articulations. And that's why you hear guys talking about, well, how many string tracks they have. And you go, wow, well, why would they have anything like that? Well, I'm going to go through and show you one example here of how that would come about. The next consideration is what library or libraries you have available. If you have one library, then you got to use what you got. And if that library doesn't have everything you need for it, then if you're doing a score and you're just doing electronically, then you got to write it for the articulations you have, not for the articulations you wish you had. What I tell my students all the time who take the professional orchestration classes is that you need two libraries. If you don't have two libraries, you're not going to really have the tools you need to create the sound that you want. Now, if you're just doing this for fun and you're just happy with the one library, then it's not a big deal. But if your intention is to work professionally and get people to pay you for your work, then you need to have two or more libraries. And I put the emphasis on the word more. The most effective MIDI mock-ups are coming from guys that have multiple libraries. And one composer that I know has a template of 400 tracks. All of his libraries are spread up on other computers. He doesn't have any virtual instruments on the computer he does the sequencing with, just this giant template. And so whatever little articulation he wants, even for a couple of beats, well, he's got that mapped out. And so he can catch all of that in doing his scores. And he comes out with some of the most amazing MIDI mock-ups around, but the secret is that he's got all the libraries spread out across multiple computers. So you just need to understand, if you're doing it for fun, use what you got. If it's your objective to go professional and get people to pay you for your work, then you need to have two or three libraries happening here. And of course, let me just tell you, these examples work with any library, but what's going to happen is, as you do more of those, you mock them up, you're going to find out what your library is going to do, and you're going to find out what it's not going to do. The next consideration is tempo. Now, you've already heard that one example. That's very brisk. And so you've got to know what articulations are going to work for that tempo. Bowing's articulations, we've been mentioning this all the way through. What this simply means is, sample library developers call this stuff articulations. String players don't call them articulations, they call them bowings. And so you've got to understand that staccato is a type of a bowing. Marcato is a kind of a bowing. Places where we talk about legato, players are playing that under a single bow. And it's marked that way. Those phrase markings are indicating how the bow works. Now, the best way to understand that, if you're really new to orchestration, is go to alexanderpublishing.com. We have an online library there, and for all the, or for a majority of the examples in our professional orchestration books, I've located YouTube videos. And so you can go and watch live orchestral performances of most of these works and just focus your eyes and watch how these bowings work. When you see how a violinist plays, you will understand more than anything I could either tell you verbally or write in a book.